What's up, fellow lords of gaming? Welcome back to the channel. So we got some new updates from Dune Awakening, and we're gonna jump right on in and let's see what we got. So the developers basically put out a roadmap. I'm gonna pull this up on screen so that way you guys can see it. We've got a new roadmap that they've basically talked about that gives us a plan for what they're going towards here in the next what I guess 9 months. So let's take a look at that. So right off the top, we can see here they gave us a little note right there. They've been playing whack-a-mole with all the bugs, the cheats, and exploits during the July month. We saw that with August, so a lot of fixes and changes there. They've even changed the way some of the deep desert mechanics work, with some limited promise to PvP players that once they figure out the land strat system, that these things will kind of shift back to the way that the deep desert was intended. Though I still don't think this is going to work. I really do believe that they need to figure out how it is that they're going to put the deep desert basically in play where it's PvP and PvE friendly, because I think with player counts kind of dwindling and on a low, we can see that there's essentially going to be pushback to that. So you can see here this week at Gamescom, they're going to be talking about the Chapter 2 free updates and the Lost Harvest DLC. They're the first major additions to the game, which are going to be released in parallel. That's very interesting, right? The Chapter 2 update is really cool because it's just continuing the story, and then the Lost Harvest DLC, we'll see what those all entail here in a second. The second DLC is new cosmetics and new things to the game like that. They're not focused on the end game because Chapter 2 DLC were planned and began development before launch, and now they're basically, I really do believe that they thought that the Deep Desert was going to hold players over until they got to this transitionary stage of releasing Chapters 2, 3, 4, and then we got to the polar map. But what they're finding is that players don't want to be engaged in this. They need to just commit to going on a PvE, PvP server scale system, in my opinion, or just going with a PvP timed event zone and stuff like that in here. So here they released the roadmap and we can see exactly what we're getting. So the first one coming up here is going to be the Lost Harvest and the Chapter 2 DLC. So they're going to continue the main story. I've been looking forward to this because one of the things that I really like the most about Dune Awakening as opposed to when I'm playing Once Human is exactly that, is the story. The story is a lot better in here because I feel like the storytellers are a lot better, where it feels like when I play Once Human, I feel like I'm being driven by lackluster AI basically there. So we got some new character recustomization. They did fix the recently fixed the issue with players reskilling and then basically losing out on skill points. They're going to talk about adding dynamic encounters. These are a necessity for a game like this, especially where we're going to be expected to be in the Haga Basin for so long. I would really like for them to work in some type of AI so that we can get some procedural generation of different map zones similar to the Haga Basin for us to visit as PvE players, and that would keep us happy and satiated to that point where we didn't need to go to the deep desert, and you leave PvP areas for the deep desert for the PvP people there. So then they talked about social hub contracts, which are a great thing, basically continuing those. The new deep desert layouts, basically, you know, changing the landscape of how the deep desert looks and basically saying, hey, you know, you can have more areas to set up. We've got new archetype armors. That'll be really cool. New hairstyles and tattoos. Next up, they talk about the Lost Harvest, specifically the new vehicle. I'm assuming this is going to be the tank, which they had already previously showed us videos of and stuff like that. This is going to contribute more to the combined arms feel of the deep desert. I don't know how the hell this is going to work. We'll have to see that. They're going to have a new contract chain with unique locations and then new building pieces and decorations. I'm really excited about the new building pieces and decorations because bar none, 100%, the thing that Dune has above Once Human and games like that is the building mechanics. It feels really nice to build, specifically an Atreides base. I have seen some really cool Harkonnen bases, but specifically I hate the Atreides bases. And then we've got new armor and weapon skins along with new swatches and emotes coming to the game as well. So all of this is good. Here you can see after September, we're going to enter a big lull inside September months, basically going to October and December. That was to be expected in my opinion, but somewhere between January and March 2026, hopefully that they reduce that time, but we're going to get the introduction of Chapter 3, the revamped end game, and then we're going to get more cosmetics. The broken lands are shattered plains of Broken Rock, known for their fearsome raiders. So essentially probably like another Haga Basin like area. We'll have to see what they talk about those. And then we get chapter 4 coming around April, June of 2026 with the Water Wars, where we're finally going to make our way to the polar caps of Arrakis. I'm suspecting, I have to believe that at some point here, probably January, March, we're going to have that third faction introduced, and hopefully, I pray to God, it's going to be the Fremen. And then they talk about 2026 and out, specifically being the expansion for consoles, the expansion for the game, and then more free updates, more DLC into 2026. Again, this is a 10-year roadmap plan for this. I'm just hoping that the game maintains a player base enough that can, even to certain degrees, my ability to continue playing the game is somewhat limited in the fact that like there's not a lot to do unless I want to go get ganked out in the deep desert, and I'm basically, you know, just doing the same resource grind and resource overhaul. Meanwhile, I'm taking the time as a little bit of downtime to go play something else as they suggested, and I've been playing things like Black Desert and getting back into Black Desert Online and Warframe. So they're talking about sharing more content, features coming in chapter 2 and the DLC as well. But in terms of the quality life improvements, they're adding things like to rename vehicles, storage containers, and placeables. They're going to have more reliable ornithopteracus for combat. They're going to have the option to swap seats in the vehicle with a hotkey. Why that wasn't in there in the first place, I don't know, but we'll have to see. And then all of these things are going to be available for the public test client as well. So if you're excited about those, you can go join the public test client at any point, download it, and you know, it's like Global Labs for Black Desert Online, and you can just download those and you can be the first to basically try those out. I have been reticent to do it just because I just don't want to. Be perfectly honest with you, especially having to recreate stuff and everything like that. So they've made changes. They talk about those. And so here we go, talking about the short-term improvements that they specifically talk about. So they are trying to improve player logging. So they see the lack of information around clarity of items when certain items, objects, and things like that are gone. They're increasing information in the logs so that they have better idea of what is going on. So listing names of people who take things from chests in your bases, stuff like that. I have yet to notice this problem, to be honest with you. I log in and out to basically do some minor things here and there. I still need to complete the deep, not the deep desert, but some areas inside the Haga Basin. And we talk about the vehicle salvaging system, that they're going to make some to recover lost vehicles. They talk about the reduction of cobalt paste and the vehicle inventory. So essentially they're going to add a cargo container that can be carried by the carrier ornithopter. I really like this idea. They talked about instance deep desert loot. So the constant camping and queuing of the deep desert testing station is a frustrating thing, right? We're going to change these to be more in line with the rest of the game. Realistically, it's one of the more frustrating pieces because they can see some of these things that are like, you know, very annoying to the player base. Current right now, you go into the deep desert, and that's what I mean, like there's not a whole lot of reason to go out there, and the time for the deep desert loot is so long and so expanded that you have to go in, you sit there inside the zone, you have to wait then for the chest to do, because otherwise you make your way through this whole entire, you know, deep desert instance, and then you go to get nothing, and it kind of sucks the life out of you of wanting to continue on playing the game. So then you sit your character in there waiting for that chest to be to respawn so you get the items, and then it just sets up a queue of players basically doing this, and that's no fun. It just isn't. The deep desert, those systems of those places, that's where the raid mechanics should have been put in. You could look at Once Human that does this fantastically well, in my opinion, by making it an engaging experience for multiple players to basically jump in, go into those things, and battle the environment. And that's where the fun is had. If you want to go play PvP, then have PvP instance zones, but they don't seem to understand this or be willing to jump off this high horse about this combined arms that just doesn't exist in the Dune universe. I don't get it, but nevertheless. So they also have offline notifications about important events. So not everybody wants to log in, check your power taxes constantly in the game, because, you know, and this is going back to one of their things, and you can see there they specifically called out Ben. This is one squarely aimed at you, Ben, right? Is that they even recognize that you don't need to be playing this for 500, 600 hours within inside of a month. Go touch grass, breathe air, but give us systems to make this a little bit easier, so that way you can say, hey, you know, there's other things that we can be that we could be doing, and we can check on these things very easily. So here we go. They're talking about long-term planning and what they have in store for the in-game. So they mentioned that the Lance Rad was supposed to be in-game activity driver, but currently it does not have the breadth or depth of content or progression to serve that function. So they're working towards chapter 3, and they're going to tie the faction progression of the game to the Lance Rad, while systematically building out the Lance Rad with a greater variety of activities across the world. I don't care what you do to the Lance Rad. At the current level and depth of the Lance Rad system, where it's just basically turn in this, fetch that, which is just go fetch me quest. Anybody that's played this, it's not going to be engaging in that vein, because you're going to have a large number of faction people that are going to basically dominate the landscape of the deep desert landscape, you know, and then the players get locked out of that system, and that's not essentially what you want to do. BDO had that problem for years, where players were seemingly locked out of the PvP zone, and then when players finally want to jump in, it was such a chaotic mess, because then you had all these people that were contributing like the complaints of what the system was, and they basically did something for that: PvE service, PvP service, and timed PvP events. As a player, this means that you can increase your faction rate by completing Lance Rad tasks. So essentially, we can get from this is that they're going to probably add more faction vendors, and just like, hey, you're going to contribute. It doesn't make sense, guys. It doesn't, in my opinion. The Lance Rad activities will become contract-based rather than delivery-based, which allow us to effectively remove the issue of stockpiling that is currently endemic in the game. What are you going to change with the contracts that are still not going to make them delivery based? Because everything that's in the game currently is delivery based within the contracts. Like, do you go complete this and go fetch me and kill so many people? Do you go do, like, guilds are just going to stockpile people up to put them at places, and then that's what's going to happen. Like, the Lance Rad activity just has not been thought through. This will ensure that that people are rewarded for solo play, as well as making contributions easier for them to track, and will give you many choices in how you progress over time. So then they go on here, as for planned activities, we have plenty in mind through the current testing station, the shipwrecks. So like, this is these don't make sense, because they're like thinking about things like assassination, treasure maps, races, construction challenges, duels, faction versus faction maps, improved control points, scavenger hunts, temporary crafting challenges. All of these things are activity that you're currently doing, right? Like, the assassinations, those kind of get boring after a while. It'd be one thing if you had on their assassination contracts, right? Where essentially, like, BDO does this, right? Where I can say that I'm going, as a solo player, maybe I get ganked by a guild, and I can put out an assassination contract on maybe that guild's leader or that player that killed me, because I can see it in the player logging, and then I can set that contract up. That gives me a reason to get resources and things like that and do that. The treasure maps, we've seen how that has become like, it's not a thing, because now players can go to this offline queue to look at treasure maps and stuff like that. Races with sandworms, what are we talking about here? Like, what are we talking about? The construction challenges, we just completed one. Duels would be a nice thing to basically add. It's one of the reasons why I believe that PvP should be timed events. Faction versus faction, those should be timed events. Control points, fights over those should be timed events. Scavenger hunts and, you know, crafting challenges, nobody gives a damn. Like, that's not going to be something that's going to keep players engaged. They say these activities are going to make use of the overland map, spawning in new maps as required. They always wanted to flesh out the overland map over time, and this will boost that along. This is the part where I feel like they should be getting into generative AI and, you know, building out those worlds, you know, those other Haga Basin like places, so that way we can have places on the overland map and increase the scale and size of the places that we're able to visit. And that should be your tiered loot based system. Like, hey, I started out Haga Basin, I went from, you know, 0 to 20, and then I went over here to this new area, and that was the Rocklands, and that was 20 to 40, and then I made my way to the polar ice caps, and that was, you know, 40 to 60, and you know, go back and forth, or you just increase the level of the enemies inside there. We'll have to see. So they're open to suggestions. They are paying attention. Go jump into Discord, because that's good as well, right? But we'll have to see where they go. So it says here, this is the part that I want players to be aware of, because it says, as the Lance Rad activities become more fleshed out, they're then going to transition the deep desert back towards the original intention, a sandbox area where players can compete for control of the spice. We will continue to iterate on the deep desert, adding no-fly zones to enforce ground combat, adding more layouts with more variety and challenge, and ensuring that there is clear progression. In addition, we are experimenting with the tech behind the deep desert, and if things go well, you will experience the deep desert in a much more stable environment. So a lot of this becomes our focus in the latter half of 2025. So the deep desert is going to continue to be an annoyance to them to try to figure it out. Now, will it spurn iteration and development of ideas? Sure, I don't doubt that will be, but I don't know that they have the tools to get it right if they're gonna just try to make it and continue to keep it this free-for-all environment where players are essentially going to get bogged down by the gank of guilds and not be able to engage in some type of solo play activity, because then you're just gonna lose your solo duo type player base, because when the point comes where I have to get forced into the deep desert, I'm just gonna log off and not play. And then your player numbers dwindle, and then you don't boost up the game. I think currently, like, the Steam concurrent player base right now is lower than Once Human, definitely lower than Destiny, and lower than quite a few games I played, and somewhere in the vicinity ballpark of about 18, 19, 20,000. I'd have to look it up again, but I was disappointed to see those numbers, and I think that they need to do something to awaken the player base and make them feel like this activity is coming. Hopefully from this roadmap, we'll get that in September 2025 with the new, character customizations. I'm looking forward to this stuff. They're going to be competing, though, with things like Arc Raiders, with things like Battlefield 6, with things like Borderlands 4, and they need to make these really impactful so that way players feel the need to stay around and stick around. I'm enjoying the game. I'm still enjoying building out my base, and I'm going to jump back into getting to that. But let me know how you guys feel about this in the comment section below. Are you enjoying Dune Awakening? Are you still playing? Are you looking forward to this roadmap with these new contents and things like that they have? Or are you excited about the changes to the deep desert? Have you been excited about the changes where they've made Stravidium and Titanium more accessible inside the deep desert? Let me know in the comment section below. Like and subscribe, guys. Until next time, peace.